Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Red Couch Theology podcast. My fearless partner is running into the room right now as we speak. So, sorry we're getting late. Started a little bit later here.
Alex booked too many things.
Yeah, he's all trying to be a pastor or something crazy. But he came in just in the nick of time for me to not cancel the show. So
just in the nick of time.
Perfect.
Too many interesting conversations.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Your gear is fully changed and you're ready to go for a podcast.
Just need to take a moment to decompress.
Yeah, just take some breathing exercises.
Deep breathes. Yes.
Yeah.
So what have I missed?
Nothing. I literally just went live the second I heard your feet.
Brilliant.
So I was like, here he comes. We're going live.
Welcome to the Red Couch Theology podcast.
Yes. Where we still meet.
Yes.
Yeah. We got some questions. Now I'm not prepared because I wasn't sure if I was canceling the show or going live. So, we did get some questions from the sermon. And I have not opened them yet. So
you don't know what they are. I don't know what they are.
Oh, we have multiple.
Wow.
We're going to talk about why in the world should we do Lent, if at all.
Oh, we should do Lent. I feel like I addressed that in the sermon, to be fair.
Well.
But I can readdress it.
I think we can readdress it. And then we have a question about John versus the book of Mark. And and then we talked about prayer in Alpha.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time in this show, I think, talking about the voice, what God's voice sounds like. And how do we know it's his voice? And how do we know whether he's answering prayer, whether it's a coincidence, and all of that stuff?
Okay, well,
should we do some low-hanging fruit first and just go with the sermon questions?
Yeah.
But that's where I'd like to end up as far as the Alpha conversation, because I think there's a lot of I don't think I've ever heard God's voice before. And then maybe they have. Yeah. That kind of stuff. All right, so we'll start with some of the questions around Lent first. So, well, first, have you fully breathed? Are you ready?
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Ready to go.
That's all it took, huh? Wow. Yeah. Does it matter if we participate in Lent?
So I think, one of the interesting things with that is that I tend to think that this church calendar that we have is old and was probably, my default is it's probably written by people that were wiser than me. So the sense of Lent, there's this great quote by a guy, I'm trying to think if I've got it on here. Maybe I just put it in my sermon notes instead of in these notes. There's this great quote by a guy called Easton Macaulay who talks about how somewhere Lent was put in as a journey, not out of belief that some of us lose our sense of the journey, but our sense that all of us lose our sense of the journey that we're on at times. And so Lent's this beautiful invitation to come back to those rhythms as we move towards Easter. Yeah. So it's a preparation time. So my feeling is just like with Advent, you think about Christmas just flies up on you and you've got everything in the stores and you've got all of the music going and most of it's kind of it's Santa Claus this or it's, and Advent is this season of preparation for Christmas, of actually refocusing on the idea that the central element is the advent of Jesus, both the first and the second.
Yeah.
And Lent is something similar. So actually, one of the ways that Lent can be directly translated is spring. Yeah? Yeah. It's from the German word Lenten, which actually means spring and is this idea of the emergence of winter. And that's one of the ways you can see resurrection, right? It's the emergence of the cold of winter into the life of spring. It's the surprising rising from death of the bulbs that you planted back before winter began.
Yeah.
And that suddenly you watch these green shoots emerge and they catch you off guard. There's almost every year of, wow, that thing's alive.
Yeah. There hasn't been enough moisture. It might not be this year.
Yeah. But that,
no flowers. No,
that's very. But my bulbs are already starting to come up. My wisteria has tiny green shoots on it. Like slowly, it's all starting to come to life.
Yeah.
And that's resurrection. And it's actually the image Jesus uses, right? Unless a seed falls into the ground.
So, are you a better Christian if you practice Lent than if you don't?
I think there's this beautiful tension with how you describe a better Christian, isn't there? Because on one hand, like we are who we are because Jesus said, like, you've been moved into a different category from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light. But is your journey richer? And will you be able to experience it in a different way because of Lent? Yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah.
Almost certainly it's going to enrich the experience.
Yeah. And so I think my answer partially to this question is, what do you mean by practice Lent?
Yeah.
Like giving up a thing that's hard to give up?
Yeah.
Do you mean be more intentional? Like what aspect of Lent
so
is
I think
this
it's
question?
Both giving up and taking up.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, there might be some, and most spiritual disciplines work like that, don't they? So if you're entering into any spiritual discipline, there's some that are about denial and some that are about taking up and entering into. And they tend to work differently depending on what you need that season of. So fasting is a saying no to something so that you can say no to other things potentially.
Yeah.
It's a discipline that helps you stop things.
Yeah.
Whereas certain like intentional ways of praying are things that you do to help you do things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's both, but I think it was so in its old traditions, like in my childhood, it would be like give up chocolate. Well, that was a standard one. And it tended to come with this sense of not give it up to take something else up, not give it up to practice something in a different way.
Yeah.
Just give it up for its own sake. So actually going without food is of no value spiritually unless you take the time during giving up food to feel your hunger and to say, God, in the same way I'm feeling this physical hunger, can you give me a spiritual hunger for you?
Yeah.
Like, so fasting has a benefit physically, regardless of how you enter into it. But the spiritual piece doesn't just come because you stop eating.
Yeah.
It comes because that is a physical cue for you to long for God to be present.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I agree with all of that. I think if you think about Lent as a tool that can help you on your spiritual journey, will you get any special brownie points with God by practicing Lent or not? There are no more brownie points for you to have. You have all of the brownie points already. And you could never practice Lent ever, and there's sufficient brownie points for you.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
But just like with the majority of the commands of Scripture, maybe all of the commands except for believe in Jesus, potentially, they're there because God wants something for you, not because God needs something from you. So, yeah, I think, you're not a better Christian for practicing Lent or a worse Christian for not practicing Lent in this sense of your relationship standing with God, other than it's a tool that might help you sense his presence more or remind you of him or whatever, those sorts of things. It's just a tool in that sense. So interesting. All right. Next question.
Yeah.
How do you and your family members practice the presence of Jesus in the midst of anxiety? Poorly. Poorly.
Yeah, I would say at times not particularly well. Like I would say I feel like my job is to be a non-anxious presence. So I don't know that we are particularly good corporate practices as a family. And I know some people are brilliant at this. Like, we pray together before meals and every night together. Like, you know, so
yeah.
I love to pray with the girls and the boys separately. And one of the things there is that I'm always in the prayer asking that God would remind them that they are loved in every situation. Like, so I want to speak those words over them that tells them there is no circumstance where they should feel like that love might be in question. There's nothing they can do that will stop me loving them.
Yeah.
And there's no situation that they should ever feel like, you know, you hear all these really sad stories of kids that feel like they hit this crisis point because they suspect that something has happened that would cause them to be rejected or unloved.
Yeah.
And I really want my kids to know there is no circumstance that could get us there. You know, they could be in prison for life and I would visit them every single week. It wouldn't matter what they'd done because the love isn't based on their performance.
Yeah.
And so
how do you practice the presence of Jesus or help your family practice the presence of Jesus specifically?
Yeah, I mean, so it's specifically in those moments we're just pausing to allow that to sink in, to allow them to, like, in those times specifically, to remind them that they loved, like, I love them a great deal, but God loves them more than I will ever love them. And so trying to help them, like, I felt like that was a hard thing for me to grasp. So I'm really, like, as a lot of parents, I'm working counterintuitively to, like, or I'm going in a different direction than I felt my journey went.
Yeah.
Where, if I'm honest, I often didn't feel like God loved me because I felt like love was tied to performance, and I felt like my performance track record was pretty awful.
Yeah.
So that for us is probably where we go, as well as me feeling my job is that non-anxious presence.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a few practices that we do as a family that help, but they're not as rhythmic and as frequent as I would like. But we do have a practice where usually in August, we go for a hike as a family, specifically about reflection and hopefulness.
Yeah.
So I take notes on my phone as we hike for each family member, and we talk about we remind ourselves of what happened that previous year, and we look back.
That's fun.
So I read their previous year's notes. I was anxious about this. I was worried about this. I was thinking about this, and like so-and-so just started this relationship, or they just started a job, or whatever. And then it jogs our memory of like what was going on in the world.
Yeah.
And then we say, well, how'd that go? And then we practice gratitude around the things that were beautiful. And then we try to notice God. So that's the presence of Jesus part. We try to notice the work of Jesus in each family member's life. By the way, this was not my idea. This is my wife. But it's become a something that I try and prioritize, because there was a few times that we did that early on when I was honestly not as on board with it, but it became so beautiful that now I'm like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And so that's one way. Now that's once a year, but it's become this like iconic thing that we do as a family that like helps us sort of anchor our year each year. So there's one. Something we did for a short period of time, and I wish we did it more now, but our schedules are so crazy when you get teenagers, is like we try to practice Sabbath on Friday nights and light a candle and pray the Sabbath.
Oh, yeah. We've done that as well at different seasons, like candles at dinner time, especially on that Thursday night for us, Sabbath's Friday.
Yeah, and we just haven't done that in a number of months now. And because schedules have shifted, but the really practical one, I guess, when anxieties get high, stopping to pray about the issue rather than trying to work on the issue is a reminder, I think. And sometimes I'm good at that. Sometimes I'm horrible at that. Sometimes I'm the most anxious person in the room because I'm trying to fix it or whatever. But I find if I do have the mental, emotional, and spiritual fortitude to be like, you know what would help this entire situation is if we all pause, or whatever, whoever I'm talking to at the time, and we just acknowledge the presence of the Lord in this moment. It takes the thing down. Now, my last answer would be would be to affirm something you said. I think, completely apart from something you do family wide, your own personal self-regulation around anxiety and practicing the presence of God, because family systems are so driven by like the dynamic relationships between each other's anxieties or lack thereof, like the calm presence versus the anxious presence. Any work you do to regulate your own anxiety in the presence of God will by proxy serve the entire family system.
Yeah.
And so something I have gotten back to recently, because I noticed that I was probably propagating more anxiety than I thought I was. I think I'm a really good non-anxious presence. I think that I am, and I am not. Like I can convince myself to not raise my voice and to talk with a cool, calm, collected, and I think I'm projecting this thing, and I'm learning that I am wrong.
Okay.
Even though I'm not raising my voice, I'm not panicking, I'm not sweating, I don't have a lot of the physiological reactions to anxiety that some people have. I'm just as anxious as some of the other members of my family who are much more overtly anxious. I'm just trying to stuff it deeper than they are. Yeah. And so I just do like a breathing practice.
Okay.
When I sense that anxiety rising, which I never even noticed prior to the recent few years. And I try to just do it every day, where I do 5 minutes of like a breathing practice, and my stress level goes down and all of these different things. And I tend to show up better. Or if I'm going to have a hard conversation, or I'm going to go spend some one-on-one time with any of my family members, I try and do this, because I just tend to be a better human, a better dad, a better husband when I do it. So there you go.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think we're not a super anxious family, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anxiety definitely comes up. It's more around school than anything else.
Yeah.
So I just try and really enter into those situations with my kids. And again, for me, like I don't tend to feel like I am anxious in those situations, and want them to have some sense of perspective on them. So I'm trying to sit with them in those places and say, this right now feels like the biggest thing that you're going to face.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, like I get to be in it with you, like holding some of the weight with you, reminding you that, actually, this is not going to be a significant part of your life. And so it's not that that takes the feelings away. It just means they're not alone in the feelings.
Yeah.
So I'm usually the one in our family that will come alongside at that point and say, okay, like, where do you need help? How can I be a part of lifting that with you? So I'm almost like in that point, like the guy in the gym, that when you're trying to lift heavy reps is just giving you that little bit of a like, okay, a nudge, like how can I help you here? And make sure that you got someone reminding you, pushing you, but reminding you that you're not in it by yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think as a teenager, your perception, or a tweenager or whatever age, your perception of the weight and how it will land on you is significant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
I think we're not the best at it a lot of the time, but yeah. All right. Next question. So on February 22nd, John 14:14. I just had an accident and have a long recovery ahead.
Mm-hmm.
John 14:14 and Mark 11:24 have similar language. However, 1 John 5:14 talks about his will and that he hears us. I do want to be healed and restored, and I'm praying for that. What is God's will was it God's will that I had the accident? Is he steering me in a different direction? I know I will learn from this experience. So is it part of his overall plan for me?
So I am not one that tends to hold particularly close the idea that everything that happens to us individually it must be God's will. Like for me, God's sovereignty doesn't seem to extend to that. And when you assume that it does, you tend to take out some big systemic things that just are part of the way that the world seems to operate. So is it God's will that the country of Haiti that I've visited more times than I can count easily is constantly impoverished? Or is it primarily human action? Is that the case? I'm pretty convinced that God uses almost everything that can happen to us if we'll allow him to.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily sure. And I've had these back and forth conversations with some of my family members around this. You know, one of my nieces pulled a boiling pot off the stove. And it just so happened that the way the boiling pot fell, it all tipped off to the side and missed her by about 6 inches. Now, the immediate reaction was someone said, oh, well, God protected her. And I kind of just paused and said, wait, are you saying that the little girl that pulled the boiling pot over and it landed on her, God didn't protect her? Like, what have we done to receive that arbitrary goodness that little girl in that other family didn't do? Was she condemned or have to experience that because her family didn't pray as much as our family? Like, what's the metric for that? And then what about all of the really faithful followers of Jesus that have received, either awful punishments for being Christians or awful impoverishment because of the place they happen to live, or awful accidents because of circumstances that are outside of their control?
Yeah.
Like, are we saying that God is actively moving every piece to that degree? And that's not necessarily how I see the world. How about you?
No, I tend to agree with you now. I remember a day, like in my theological development, where this very issue was one of the hardest things to let go of. The idea that God ordered every droplet of rain. Mm-hmm. That was deeply comforting to me.
Yeah.
Because I could just basically say, like, he's got it. He's got everything figured out.
Yeah.
And so every single droplet of rain, he like literally is placing each droplet, every single, like that level of kind of deterministic sovereignty. And the idea of letting go of that felt like the world is uncontrollably chaotic to me.
Yeah.
And I think now I've come to see God's sovereignty as even bigger than carrying holding every drop of rain. Yeah. I think of God as more like a master chess player that sees every possible move and then shifts his pieces in such a way that he is guaranteed to win.
And so
the kingdom.
And if you don't see the world that way, well, what does it mean to live in a broken world? So is the world broken because of human behavior, and God is actively working to restore it to order? So it's in a place of disorder or unorder, to use the John Walton language. If you go to believe that the world became disordered and God is the primary agent of what disorder looks like, well, then it's hard to place God as actively shaping order through his church when you actually see him as the agent of disorder and unorder in the rest of the world. And so I tend to think that we live in a world where accidents are possible. And that whatever happens, God is willing to use those accidents.
Yeah.
I do think there is language that I think I've found really helpful. This is Wayne Mueller language around rush and lack of rest, that sometimes our body revolts. And so when we don't take rest seriously, then sicknesses become rest.
Yeah.
Accidents become rest because we're less aware of what we're doing. And so I tend to think that to be true as well.
Yeah. Yeah, these are complicated questions because I do think there's I think that God is so sovereign and so wise and so capable that he is able to react and bring goodness and beauty to the broken outcomes that we create.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's actually a bigger perspective of sovereignty. Mm-hmm. That's so there's a parent, for as an illustration, there's a parent who literally would I will always hold my child's hand in every situation, never let them engage anything in life without my assistance, kind of sovereignty. I will control every outcome. And if you imagine them, an infinitely powerful God doing that, that's his capacity to do that would be very, very high for every one of his children. And then there's the parent who's got all that same power and lets us as children run around and skin our knees and bump our, but knows when to step in and when not to step in.
Yeah.
And the latter parent seems the more wise, more capable parent than the one that says, I'm going to cocoon this child so much that they couldn't possibly harm themselves. Yeah. Somehow the one that is a little bit more hands-off seems more strong and powerful as a parenting figure than the first.
Yeah.
The other one seems like an anxious control sort of situation. And so I tend to think of God in the latter. We could get into a bunch of the theology around some of these things, but I don't think that's the heartbeat behind the question. So did they get into an accident? And was God trying to communicate something to this person?
I would tend to detach the two. I would say, yes, they got into an accident, and also in the accident, God may well be trying to communicate something. And again, that could be the speed, the slowness. That could be reliance. That could be fears. That could be anxiety. That could be any of those things that he's trying to help navigate. But I had a friend a few years ago who said to me, yes, I tend to believe that God's goodness and grace is so great that even when we do something that's the wrong choice, God has an incredible way of bringing it about so it was a right choice. And you only need to look as far as preachers that are now helping people, pastors are now navigating people through drug addiction that were drug addicts themselves.
Yeah.
Who were able to sit in the situation and understand it. Was it God's will? I would not say that, but is he using that? Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for us to go back to the parenting question, because we tend to realize we are who we are because of our experiences, but our desire for our kids is that they have no experiences whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I'm the product of learning some school of hard knocks. And that's been an important part of my development. But my desire is for my kids to have a wonderful Jesus-filled faith with no failures, experiences, or accidents whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I have to trust God with that. So my little boy Jude was he got some general anesthetic the other day to fix some problems with his teeth that they just couldn't get to with him being conscious. And so, you've got this little boy just wiped out, going through something for the third time, when most people don't do that 3 times, in the first 30 or 40 years of their life.
Yeah.
And that there's some minor risks to that. Fortunately, in our day and age, minor in comparison to what was before.
Yeah.
And so my prayer during that time was a prayer of trust that that actually was really helped by the prayer initiative that we're sending out. So if you're not doing that, little prompt, that's really valuable.
The Lent prayer initiative, yeah.
Was a reminder that, well, God loves him far more than I will ever love him.
Yeah.
And so while I attach that to an outcome, I'm also trusting that God knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Yep. You know, back to the parenting illustration, I think a good parent, oftentimes there's a wisdom that has to be had. You know, you don't want your kid running in the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a time where, like, one of the best things you can do to a parent, as a parent, is to let your child make a decision that has a natural consequence that's painful.
Yeah.
And then instead of saying, I told you so, fly into comfort.
Yeah.
Because they know that you told them so.
Yeah.
And the pain they're experiencing for, like, don't climb the banister.
Yeah.
And they fall off and they hit their head.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, I've been telling you to stop climbing the banister. To have the wherewithal as a parent to say, now's the time to come in and hold the child, to comfort them, to be that that nurturing presence. The pain is the scolding.
Yeah. But isn't it feel so good to be able to go, see,
totally.
I told you.
It takes a lot of restraint.
What are you doing?
It takes a lot of restraint as a parent to do that. But then the pain becomes a bonding exercise between the child and the parent, where they remember that they were told not to. They're experiencing pain, which is sort of by proxy, the natural scolding of the parent. And yet the parent shows up with love and comfort. You leave the situation where the kid's like subconsciously or consciously, they did tell me, they were kind of right, and yet they showed up with mercy, grace, and love. I'm closer to them than before, and I learned the lesson all at once.
Absolutely,
like these. So, did you get into an accident because God forced you to? I would tend to think no. There's a chance that God's more active in that. I think sometimes he's very active in these kinds of ways, and sometimes he's very much letting the natural...
We're trying to unpack mysteries here, so it's not like we know.
But what I suspect is always he's the kind of parent that rushes to your aid and says, I see your pain, and I would like to leverage this moment to grow near to you and demonstrate my love.
Yeah.
So for lack of we don't know what he's up to for you, but I think that there's good biblical evidence that that's what he's always up to in the midst of our pain, which I think is a great segue actually to the subject of prayer.
Yeah.
Like we just talked about prayer in this question. We just talked about prayer that prayers that you prayed for your son as he's going into anesthesia. Like, how do we, are we changing things when we pray? How do we know when he's answered, when it's a coincidence, when it's not a coincidence? Yeah. Does he step into human history and literally change something that he wouldn't have changed if we hadn't prayed? All of these questions that spin around prayer.
So I think on one hand, there's a really great quote that I love, that I think just gives you like something to come back to. And it was a quote that someone gave me years ago. And they simply said, I've noticed that when I pray, coincidences happen. And when I don't, they don't.
That was in the Alpha class last night.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. So
you mentioned it multiple times.
The guy's name was J. John, and he's a part of the Church of England, so really connected to some of the Alpha guys and stuff.
A close friend with.
Yeah. So when I pray, coincidences happen, and when I don't, they don't. And so maybe that's just because we're more aware of what we're looking for. When we pray. But it does seem like across history that's been like stories that have shown up. And sometimes you go to small stories that we've experienced. Sometimes there's the big stories. Like I've always loved the story of George Mueller, the guy who ran the orphanage system in Bristol when the government really didn't do stuff like that. And he never asked for a penny off anyone. But stuff just turned up when he needed it.
Yeah.
He sat children down with nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and the the butcher walks in and says, hey, like, we had this problem with this delivery. It came at the wrong time. Do the children need any meat? And so he just hands them over boxes of meat. And then the next minute, the milkman walks in and says, hey, my milk float broke down outside. Do you need any milk? And he's like, yeah, thank you. So those stories like are well documented across history as mysteries that we don't really understand.
Yeah.
And I have, similar stories in my life, similar stories in the life of friends that I think just seem to point to the fact that we don't know why prayer works. We just know it works.
Yeah. Yeah, we told a bunch of stories around our table groups around those kinds of coincidences.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stories were like small enough things that they could be coincidences.
Sure. Yeah.
And yet eerie in one sense. And like one of the things I've been kind of ashamed about is I've been leading Alpha is I'm pretty open about my various doubts I've had over the years around Christianity. And then some of the stories that I tell, I should have no doubt. Like we've had literally hundreds of dollars show up in cash on our doorstep that match the amount of money we needed for a specific issue.
Yeah.
My parents have experienced supernatural miracles in Rwanda of protection of life in the face of supernatural like demon stuff. And I'm wrestling with faith and doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is the struggle of being human, at least this human. If you're like me, I'm struggling with doubt when I've seen things that are inexplicably connected to prayer.
Well, I've told,
and yet I still doubt prayer.
I've told the story before of my dad getting sick, right before we were planning to move, and having this sense of, man, if he gets really sick, like if he dies, I just don't think I can move. I think I'm going to have to stay.
Yeah.
Not that would have been the worst thing anyway, but just some sense of like, okay, this is like, I need to wait this out. So, he just went yellow one day, like jaundice, eyes bloodshot, started dropping weight like crazy. Went in for like liver scans. Like my friend who was a doctor was like, man, that sounds like liver carcinoma to me. Like, that's really concerning. And one day, in the midst of all that prayer, just suddenly started getting better. And he actually went to his doctor to like follow up. And his doctor said to him, well, here's what I'm going to say to you. Your liver wasn't working. We don't know why it wasn't working. It is working now. We don't know why it's working now. You should probably just go home. Like, I mean, so like, you're like, could that be an accident or a coincidence? Sure. His liver could have failed miserably and started working again. But also at the same time, we were very actively praying for him. And so also, could it have been God that did the healing? Absolutely as well. And so I tend to like to default towards, I'm going to say it was God and give him the glory for that rather than say it was just coincidence. Like there's no advantage to giving coincidence the credit is like giving taxes to the government. Like, is that really what you want to do?
Well, I mean, if you're an atheist, maybe, because at least is a confirming,
that's very true.
Potential.
Yeah.
Or if you're just a skeptic, you're like, well, yeah, like coincidences happen. Now, if I'm allowed to be so bold to reveal how mentally insane I might be when it comes to things like this, I think of both coincidences and supernatural intervention as pretty similar, even scientifically.
Okay. Let's say more.
So here's what I mean.
Before we judge you, I have my steak in the car, but I'm going to have to go look for firewood. So if we decide to burn you at the stake.
Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect. So if God upholds the universe by the word of his power, every second that matter exists is a miraculous thing.
Okay.
Every natural occurrence that aligns with the scientific laws is supernatural.
Yeah.
So if you can get to the place where you believe in an unmoved mover, an uncaused cause, like all the way down to does God exist or doesn't he, there is no such thing as anything that isn't supernaturally sustained. And I think there's some scientific, not proof, because you can't prove this kind of thing scientifically, nor can you prove them like supernaturally, whatever. There's no like data point that's like eliminates the potential of other things. But there's some scientific data that implies some of these things. One of the reasons why we have theories around the multiverse, one of the reasons we have theories around string theory and around alternate dimensions and all these sorts of things is because there's scientific realities that we have scientific proof that things are occurring, but no scientific explanation for why they're occurring, like quantum entanglement. We just know that it happens, and we know that it happens consistently every time, but we can't explain it. And it breaks the laws of classical physics. So there's like one set of math equations for classical physics, which is like physics at a larger particle level. And there's a whole different set of equations that work elegantly and beautifully in quantum physics. In other words, physics at a particle level. And they do not, they're not compatible with each other. And so then you have physicists who are like trying to extrapolate, how is this going to work? And all like maybe there's this alternate dimension, like maybe where God lives, that like is somehow communicating faster than the speed of light between these alternate dimensions. This all sounds so kooky that it sounds supernatural to me. And physicists don't even have a clue what's going on. So when we pray and when a coincidence happens, I think it's all part of this structure and systems that God set in motion from the foundation of the world. So even if it was literally just he knew that an object in motion continues in motion. Let's say, as scientific as you want to make it, a car had this much momentum, and therefore, or let's take your example earlier, the thing of water on a stove. She picks it up. It's on this trajectory, so it misses her. Pure science. It was absolutely coincidence. But God created the laws of science and the structures from the foundation of the world that allows it to be. It's supernatural. Every ounce of it's supernatural. Does that mean he never touches the natural and shift physics? No. It just means everything's miraculous. We live in a nonstop.
As someone once said, everything is spiritual.
Yeah. So there's my overly analytic mind.
I love it.
Pondering some of these things.
And now you know an awful lot about Aaron and how he sees things. Because you do have this capacity to just wander off into the quantum sphere.
So here's, let me just now take this to the Bible. Just briefly, let me go one more nerd level.
Let me try and weirdly attach this to...
One more nerd level. So when Jesus walks on water, what if he's just doing science that we don't know about? Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
That
he's basically saying, like, I created all things in this dimension, in all of the spiritual dimension, the heaven space, earth space, and I'm just able to interact with all of my created order, including the created order where the angels sort of function, and the created order where humanity functions. And I'm just able to play with all of the cosmos.
So one of the really interesting things right now, and David Kinnaman, who does a lot of like research and a lot of surveys of people, talks about this. Interestingly, Christians today in the West are less likely to believe in the spirit world than people outside the church. So you have this weird system where you start saying to people like, well, maybe Jesus is just operating in this like spirit world that's like kind of like invisible and around us. And a whole bunch of Christians go, oh, I don't know about that. Whereas a whole bunch of people outside the church are like, yeah, I mean, it seems like there's probably a way to connect with that spiritual world and like, you know, operate in it to a degree.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, which is very strange when you think about it. You think about our supposed worldview, but our worldview, our Christian worldview has at times become so clinical and knowledge-based over anything that it's harder for us to imagine or even to trust in this world going on around us.
Yeah.
I think we've probably lost something there.
Yeah. And I just tend to think it's helpful for me when I run into these individual stories that feel difficult. Was that a coincidence? I don't know if I buy that one. If I zoom out to some of these realities, I think every second is miraculous.
Yeah.
And then why not? Like, we believe in resurrection, people. Why not the pot of water was a miraculous thing that maybe he set in motion when he first set all things in motion, and he knew that was the outcome there, and whatever. But I just think it's all kind of miraculous to me. All right, so one final question on the subject of prayer. What does God's voice sound like? And how do you know it's him?
So I think I would say, for me, the process of living into that was hard. So I started following Jesus, you know, passionately at about 18 years old.
Yeah.
And for the first years of that, I think I tried to like do everything I could to listen to what God's voice was. And usually meant that I became very like almost religious about stuff. Like I'd always be like, you know, I'd be out and feel like, you know, God was like, oh, I want you to pick up that piece of litter. Oh, I want you to talk to this person. I want you to do that. Like, it was very like, almost like a basketball coach giving lots and lots of instructions.
Yeah.
And as I've grown up, that's not what I think God's voice sounds like anymore. Like, to me, God's voice, the way I would characterize it most of all is a deeply kind voice. And so for me, it's like this internal thing of just like describing it is harder than knowing it. So usually it's a voice that catches me off guard now. It's not one that I'm trying to listen for, although that happens. It's often one that like, I'm like, oh, there you are. You know, it comes up mostly in the richest ways in seasons where I feel disconnected, where I feel less than. And often it seems then that like those are the moments for me where it feels like, to talk about overriding, God overrides the process of listening and almost comes in surprisingly over the top of all those things.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's some standard safeguards, like the things that God says seem like the things that he says in the New Testament. Like, you know, the way Jesus talks to us today is the way that he talked to people in the New Testament as well.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those words are demanding and require action, but a lot of the time they're reassuring and reminding of important truths.
Yeah.
So if you read, like right now we're doing those farewell discourses, the upper room discourses. Like a lot of the things Jesus says in that are a lot like the things that he might say to us.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like, I won't leave you as an orphan. I am coming back for you. If you love me, do this. Like, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, that I focus on the kindness, because that's kind of one of the things I didn't expect.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I'd thought about like that God's voice would sound kind to me.
Yeah.
But I think.
Yeah. And so for me, it was like, I don't think I've ever heard an audible voice.
Yeah. And I think I've only like come to something close to that, like 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. And if you want to talk about the philosophy of like the transfer of information and in regards to prayer, you could read Dallas Willard's book, Hearing God, because he actually talks about what does it even mean to transfer information from one mind to another? The power, do you even need the motion of sound waves to do that when we know that that's not the case? Like we communicate through body language, we communicate through all sorts of different things. Like transfer of information from one mind to another doesn't always require the movement of sound waves and particles in the air. Yeah. So he goes through that deeper philosophical explanation or psychological explanation of listening to God's voice. But so for me, it's never been like an audible voice, but it's similar to you in the sense that sounds like that idea that came to my mind feels uniquely other than me.
Yeah,
And a couple things that I've noticed is I suspect it kind of shows up slightly different for each one of us. And here's why. I think I talk to my kids differently depending on who they are and what they
imagine if you talk to Clara the same way you talk to Reese.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. And so I think the voice sounds slightly different for each one of us. And so I've concluded that the reason this particular aspect of what I've come to know as God's voice is him also kind of chuckling at how dense I am. Persistence is one of the markers that I see. I sense when it's God's voice, it's something that's popped into my mind so many times. And I think it's his way of like, I know that you're a little slow. And so because I know my son is a little slow, I will say this to him 75 times in the next 2 weeks. And then finally he's going to be like, oh, is that you, God? And that's like, so that's how one of the things I've come to know. And now when I pray, I invite that persistence as a marker. And I say, if that's you, let it linger.
A friend of mine gave me this great language of like what he does is if he feels like he's heard God say something, he puts it on a shelf.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I'm just going to kind of drop that there, knowing that God doesn't just say it once and then leave us to figure it out.
And then you kind of move on with your day, and then it suddenly comes back, and then it comes back, and then it comes back. And then I do a little bit of a quick check with the character of Jesus. Like, does this sound like the same character as I see in the Gospels? Does it sound loving to others and to God and others? And if it doesn't conflict any of those things, I just decide this is him. And I try to live into whatever it was that he said, whether that's believe a truth about myself he's saying, or do a task that I think he's inviting me to do. And I just trust that was his voice. One other thing for me that I've noticed in recent years that's a interesting thing, and this might just be for me, is I hear less of it than in the past.
Interesting.
And I thought that was maybe, I'm like, am I backsliding? Am I less sensitive to the Spirit? But now I have this image of the face of Jesus. That I'll ask a direct question, sort of in the direction of heaven, whatever that means, right? What should I do about this? And I get this cheeky grin image instantly in my head. And he kind of just nods like, you already know. We've been doing this long enough, Aaron, that you know the answer. And the reason you're asking, I welcome the question, but the reason you're asking is you don't like the answer. And that happens more and more and more the longer I walk with Jesus. And I'm like, oh, but could you just tell me just so I can be on the safe side? And he's like, so it's a silence, but it's an active silence. It's like an image in my head of him kind of nodding and smiling with a knowing face. And I think he's right. I know enough of the scriptures. I know his heart enough. I know I've come to intuit some of the things that his kingdom is about in such a way that I can sort of kind of know what he's up to. And I don't need to ask, and I want to ask anyway because I don't like the answer.
So, Love it. Good stuff.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will be back next week with another show.
And on that bombshell.
And I'm trying to find the button as always.
No, don't say that. On that bombshell.
Bombshell.